Back in the 60s, Eastside High School in Paterson, New Jersey, was one of the top performing schools around. Joe is a teacher there, and his students love him. He doesn't just teach them academics, he makes it fun. There are competitions, lessons about real-life things, and he always keeps it kind and engaging. But one morning, while he's in the middle of class, another teacher, Frank, interrupts and tells him that the union executive board is having a meeting without them. Joe doesn't take it well. He storms into the meeting, furious, and yells at everyone for always backing down the moment the local government pressures them. He's sick of being the only one who fights for reforms. The board had enough. Tired of his outbursts and confrontations, they decide to transfer him to another school. Fast forward 20 years, and Eastside High has completely fallen apart. The once shiny building is now run down, and the halls are a mess of chaos. Violence and bullying are everywhere. Students openly ignore the teachers, or worse, assault them if they try to step in. Drugs and weapons are being passed around like candy. Most of the kids can't even pass the basic skills test. This is a major problem for Mayor Botman. If the school's scores don't improve, the state is going to take control, and that could cost him his reelection. Frank, who's now the school's superintendent, and Mr. Rosenberg, the school board attorney, come to one clear conclusion. They need to bring Joe back. Botman isn't thrilled with the idea. He knows Joe has a reputation for being difficult, but he agrees. He doesn't have a better option. So Frank and Rosenberg pay Joe a visit and offer him the position of principal at Eastside High. But Joe says no. He knows Botman doesn't care about the students, just his political career. Frank doesn't argue. Instead, he tells Joe the hard truth. All of Joe's shouting and crazy Joe antics haven't really changed anything. If he dies tomorrow, will he have made a difference? That it's a nerve. Joe reconsiders. The very next day, Joe walks into Eastside High as the new principal. He immediately gathers all the teachers and lays it out straight. From now on, his meetings are his. Nobody else speaks. He asks for a list of every student involved in criminal activity. He tells the custodian to start cleaning up the walls and says students in detention will help. Mr. Darnell, the English teacher, gets demoted to assistant football coach. Hallways will now have guards to help stop the violence. And everyone's focus needs to be on getting students ready for the upcoming standardized test, because the school needs at least 75% of students to pass. Last time, it didn't even hit 40. Then Joe calls a school-wide assembly. All the troublemakers from the list are put up on stage. On his way to the front, Joe bumps into Kenesha, a student who's actually happy to see him. He used to be her elementary school principal. Joe gets up on stage and asks the crowd for silence. Nobody listens. The kids on stage laugh when he tells them to sing the school song. Joe doesn't waste time. He looks at the group on stage and announces they're all expelled. He promises the rest of the students that from now on, no one's going to bother them again. Security escorts the expelled students out, and just like that, the atmosphere shifts. The rest of the students calm down, especially when Joe tells them if they don't get serious about school, they could be next. That afternoon, Joe meets with all the parents. Liana, whose son was among the kids Joe just expelled, shows up at the parents' meeting livid. A lot of parents back her up at first, but Joe doesn't back down. He tells them a few rotten apples can spoil the whole basket, and he's not about to let that happen here. He's expelled 300 students, he says, to save 2,700, and he's promised God he'll turn this school around. By the end of his speech, most of the room is on his side. Everyone but Liana, who storms out still angry. The very next morning, Joe arrives to find a student waiting for him. Sam's, one of the freshly expelled. Sam's claims Joe made a mistake. He insists he didn't do anything wrong. Joe knows he's lying and marches him up to the roof. He calls the kid a coward for hiding the expulsion from his parents and tells him straight, if drugs are going to kill you and you're ready to die, jump now. Sam's, shaking, refuses. He swears he'll straighten up. Joe gives him one last chance, slip once more, and he's gone for good. At lunch, Joe makes the rounds from table to table, listening to what students have to say and doling out quick advice. He's pleased to see Ray in a neatly pressed suit, great example to the others. Sam's and his buddies, though, are slouching around in sloppy clothes and harassing a girl. Joe hauls them to their feet, calls out their wardrobe in front of everybody, and tells them to sing the school song. He reminds the room, when the school song plays, nobody moves. Just then, Mr. Darnell bends over to pick up a piece of trash. Joe spots it and sends him straight to the office. Sam's and his friends don't know a single lyric, so they get detention, and Joe announces a new rule. From now on, anyone could be asked to sing the school song on the spot, and they'd better be ready. Joe heads to the music room to tell Ms. Elliott, the choir teacher, about the rule. She's willing, but only after her students finish prepping for a big choir concert in New York. They're working on Mozart and need rehearsal time. She calls Joe out, saying he can't stand it when another adult pushes back. Joe fires her on the spot and cancels the concert, ordering everyone to focus on the upcoming standardized test. From now on, the pianist, Mrs. Powers, will handle music class. Later, in his office, Mr. Darnell confronts Joe. He says he feels treated like garbage and reminds Joe these are his students, too. Joe responds by suspending him. Vice Principal Jones steps in, trying to reason with Joe. Darnell is more than just a coach, and the staff can't follow a plan they don't understand. Joe only shrugs. That's exactly how he wants it. The day of the practice test finally arrives. Every student sits down and gives it their best shot while teachers move around the room, keeping close watch to make sure everything runs smoothly. Joe's not the kind of man who likes to wait around, so he sends Joan to the school board office to ask for the test results directly. No delays, no red tape. A few mornings later, a student is giving a special presentation for the local press when chaos suddenly erupts in the cafeteria. One of the boys Joe had expelled sneaks back in and attacks Ray, punching him hard, then pulling out a knife. Joe acts fast. He grabs the kid and stops the fight, demanding to know how the boy even got into the building. Security tells him someone must have let him in from the inside. That's it for Joe. He makes a firm decision. From now on, all school doors will be locked and chained shut. Sometime later, Joe finds Kenesha looking down and withdrawn. She's a smart kid, but her grades have slipped ever since she lost her place to live. Her mom didn't want her anymore. Determined to help, Joe takes Joan with him to visit Kenesha's mother at her home. Her mom opens up. She explains that she had Kenesha when she was still a teenager. She had to abandon the life she dreamed of to work nonstop. These days, she's trying to stay clean, but it puts her in a dark mental space. That's why she thought handing Kenesha over to child services would be best, though she never stopped wanting or loving her. Joe promises to help. He says if she agrees to take Kenesha back and commit to helping her stay focused on school, he'll help her find a better job and a nicer place to live. But soon, the locked doors make the news. Liana jumps at the chance to use the controversy, bringing her complaint to the school board. Frank scolds Joe for going too far, again. He tells him Liana is building a case to get him removed, and the fire chief is backing her. Frank tells Joe that he's doing exactly what he did to his own wife, pushing people away. If Joe wants to be respected as a leader, he needs to show respect to others too. That means apologizing to Ms. Elliott and Mr. Darnell. Joe follows through. Darnell is reinstated, but the trouble doesn't stop there. The fire chief storms into the school, this time bringing the press along with him. Joe doesn't flinch. He threatens the man with a baseball bat until he leaves the premises. Afterward, Joan tries again to talk sense into Joe to express her concerns about his approach. As usual, Joe brushes her off. Then comes a disappointment. Joe sees Ray again, but only because the boy is leaving. He's had enough and is transferring out. Joe tries not to show it, but it stings. Later, Joe catches Sam's and his crew messing around in the bathroom. He makes them line up and sing the school song on the spot. But what comes out shocks him. A soulful, powerful version sung like a church choir. For the first time, he doesn't scold. He just listens. After hearing that powerful version of the school song in the bathroom, Joe asks the boys where they learned it. They tell him it was Mrs. Powers, the pianist. So, Joe goes to see her personally. He thanks her, congratulates her, and tells her from now on, her version of the school song is the official one. He wants everyone to learn it. Soon after, the practice test results come in. Joe opens them, and it's a punch to the gut. They only scored 33%. That's nowhere near what they need. He calls all the teachers to the gym and lays it on them. The results are bad because they weren't good enough. He tells them they need to work harder. From now on, there'll be a tutoring program and an extra Saturday course focused on remedial reading. One teacher points out the obvious. It's going to be hard to convince students to show up on the weekend. Joe already has a plan. They'll go door to door, visiting every student's home. They'll talk to the parents, get them involved. And if the parents can't read either, they're welcome to join the sessions too. In the following weeks, the entire school community digs in. Teachers give it everything they've got. Students push themselves harder than ever. and Joe is right there with them, showing up, checking in, staying close. But it's still not enough for Liana. Along with the fire chief, she goes straight to Mayor Botman. Frank and Rosenberg are there too, trying to defend Joe, but Botman has made up his mind. He kicks them out of the meeting and cuts a deal with Liana. In exchange for her support in the upcoming election, he'll fire Joe. Later, in a bathroom stall, Botman thinks he's alone and tells the fire chief they'll arrest Joe after the big test, charging him over the illegal chains on the school doors. What Botman doesn't know is that Rosenberg is in the next stall, listening to everything. Rosenberg rushes to tell Frank, and together they warn Joe. Joe wastes no time and puts together a plan. If the fire chief shows up, security will call Code 10 through their walkie-talkies. That'll signal the teachers to unlock and remove the chains temporarily before anyone notices. Later, Joan approaches Joe to talk about the reading program. They're finally seeing real progress. But Joe brushes her off. He tells her he's too busy and that she should be able to handle things on her own without always needing him. At the end of the day, Joan's had enough. She asks for transfer. She lets him have it. She calls him an egomaniacal windbag who takes out his frustrations on people who can't fight back. She says half the staff feels the same way. They just haven't walked out yet because they care about the students. But she's done. She's tired of the disrespect and the lack of support. She wants out. The next morning, just before the school assembly, Joe hands Joan her transfer papers. No drama, just quietly done. Then, standing in front of the students, he gives a speech. He talks about the reputation East Side High has around town, how people think the students there are wild and hopeless. But he tells them they're not savages. They have the power to prove everyone wrong. Joe also takes a moment to thank the teachers for everything they've done, and he makes sure to give Joan credit for helping him see their value. After that, Mrs. Powers leads the school in singing Lean on Me. The students join in, full of energy and hope. They're ready to show the state they're not inferior. They're proud of what they've built together. Watching the entire school united like that, Joan has a change of heart. She decides to stay. Then comes the big day. It's time for the real test. Students sit down, pencils in hand, and fill in the answers with confidence and determination. But while they're inside focusing, things outside are moving fast. The school board meeting is approaching, and Liana is done waiting. Botman finally gives the fire chief the green light to go get a court order. Back at school, Kanisha finds out she's pregnant. She tells her boyfriend, but he doesn't believe it's his, even though she swears he's the only boy she's ever been with. Joe sits down with her, gently offering support and promising they'll figure something out. But before the conversation can go further, a guard bursts in. The fire chief is outside. He's not alone. He brought Liana and a group of reporters. Joe calls for Code 10, hoping the staff can get the chains off the doors before anyone sees. But the fire chief is ready. He's got a recording of the code, and this time he comes with a court order. Joe is arrested on the spot for violating the fire code. With Joe gone, Joan is left in charge. That night, the school board meeting begins. Frank stands up for Joe, trying to defend all the progress he's made. But Liana fires back, pointing out that the practice test results were only 33%. In her eyes, Joe failed. Just as the board is about to make a decision, the doors swing open. Every single student from East Side walks into the room. They're not yelling. They're not protesting. They're demanding, with pride, that Joe be released. Botman starts to panic. He knows it'll look bad to fire a man who has this kind of support. So he goes to Joe and tries to convince him to tell the students to go home. Joe refuses. That's when Botman reveals his leverage. The police are outside, ready to intervene. If anything turns violent, the consequences could be serious. Reluctantly, Joe agrees to speak to the students. Not because he thinks they're wrong, but because he doesn't want to see them get hurt. Outside, Liana is trying and failing to calm crowd. The students keep pushing back, listing everything Joe has done for them. They call him a father figure, and when Joe hears that, it hits him hard. Still, he steps up and reminds them to follow the law. Stay respectful. Stay calm. And just as he finishes, Joan bursts through with the real test results. They've passed. The entire school erupts in cheers. Botman looks stunned. Joe turns to him and says, without hesitation, that he and the state can go to hell. Joe keeps his job. The students finish the night singing the school song, proud, loud, and united. When graduation day finally arrives, Joe hands out the diplomas one by one. And for each student, he has something personal and thoughtful to say, something just for them.